All right, let's cut the small talk. Do you ever feel like life's just messing with you? Like you're doing everything right, but happiness still feels just out of reach? Well, spoiler alert, it's not life, it's you. Yeah, I said it. The truth is, there are some brutal, no-nonsense realities about life that no one likes to talk about. But here's the thing. Once you face these truths head-on, life gets so much better. Today, we're breaking it all down. Harsh truths that might just slap you in the face, but will also set you free. Let's rip off the band-aid, shall we? Grab a coffee, a snack, maybe even a tissue. You're going to need it. Let's dive in. 1. Life isn't fair, and that's okay. Let's get real for a second. Everyone loves to complain about how unfair life is. And honestly, they're right. Life isn't fair. But here's the kicker. It was never supposed to be. Somewhere along the way, we got fed this lie that if we work hard, play by the rules, and do the right things, life will reward us. Guess what? That's not how it works. And the sooner you accept it, the happier you'll be. Here's a personal story. A few years ago, I was up for a promotion at work. I had put in years of effort, late nights, weekends, sacrificing my personal life, and I just knew I was the obvious choice. But when the decision came down, my boss gave the position to someone who had barely been there for a year. And the reason? They fit the culture better. What does that even mean? I was angry, frustrated, and honestly, heartbroken. It felt like a slap in the face. I spent weeks obsessing over it, telling anyone who'd listen how unfair it was. But guess what? My complaints changed nothing. I still didn't have the job, and now I was bitter and stuck. Finally, I had to ask myself a hard question. What am I going to do about it? Here's what I realized. Sitting around waiting for fairness is like standing outside in a storm, hoping it won't rain. Life doesn't play by your rules. It plays by its own chaotic, unpredictable ones. I could either keep sulking or use that experience as fuel to create my own opportunities. So I quit that job, took a chance on myself, and built something better. Turns out, getting passed over was the best thing that ever happened to me. Now let's flip the script for a second. Imagine if life were fair, if everyone got exactly what they deserved when they deserved it. Sounds great, right? But think about it. Fairness would take away all the randomness that makes life beautiful. Some of the best things in my life happened because life wasn't fair. I didn't deserve the random act of kindness from a stranger that helped me during a rough patch. I didn't earn the opportunity that came my way out of sheer luck. Fairness isn't the point. What you do with life's unfairness is. Here's another layer to this truth. Fairness often depends on perspective. What feels unfair to you might be someone else's blessing. Take the person who got that promotion over me. Sure, I felt cheated, but maybe they were going through their own struggles and needed that win more than I did. Fairness isn't objective. It's messy and complicated, just like life. And let's address the elephant in the room. Sometimes life is unfair in ways that are downright cruel. People lose loved ones too soon, suffer illnesses, or face hardships that feel completely senseless. These aren't lessons we can spin into positives. They just hurt. But even in those moments, there's a choice. We can let unfairness define us, or we can find meaning and strength despite it. Here's the takeaway. Life isn't fair, and it never will be. But that's not a reason to give up. It's a reason to let go of the illusion that fairness is the goal. Instead, focus on resilience, adaptability, and gratitude for the moments when life surprises you in good ways. So, the next time you catch yourself saying, "It's not fair," stop and ask, "What's my next move?" That's where your power lies, not in fairness, but in your ability to respond. And who knows? That thing you're complaining about now might just be the setup for something better later. 2. Your comfort zone is a prison. Let's talk about comfort zones, the cushy, cozy spaces where everything feels familiar and safe. You know, the zone where you binge-watch your favorite shows, order the same takeout every Friday, and avoid all the scary unknowns of life. Sounds nice, right? Well, here's the hard truth. Your comfort zone isn't just a cozy bubble, it's a freaking prison. Here's why this is controversial. Society glorifies comfort. We're taught to aim for stability, security, and work-life balance. But let's be real, most of us use those as excuses to avoid discomfort. We tell ourselves, why rock the boat? Things are fine as they are. But fine isn't living, it's existing. And if you stay in your comfort zone too long, you'll wake up one day and realize you've spent your entire life just surviving. Here's a personal story to drive it home. A few years ago, I was stuck in a dead-end job. It paid the bills and I didn't hate it, but every day felt like a repeat of the one before. I wanted more. I dreamed of doing something creative, something impactful, but I was terrified to take the leap. What if I failed? What if I couldn't make enough money? What if people laughed at me? So I stayed put for years. I told myself, this is good enough, but deep down, I was miserable. Finally, one day, I hit a breaking point. I asked myself, what's the worst that could happen if I take a chance? And what's the worst that could happen if I don't? That second question shook me. The worst-case scenario wasn't failing. It was staying stuck in mediocrity for the rest of my life. So I quit. I left the job, took a huge pay cut, and started building something that actually mattered to me. Was it terrifying? Absolutely. Did I screw up along the way? You bet. But I grew more in those first few months outside my comfort zone than I had in the past 5 years. Here's the thing. Your comfort zone isn't just holding you back. It's actively shrinking you. It keeps you small, safe, and stagnant. And the longer you stay there, the harder it becomes to leave. It's like that friend who convinces you to just stay in tonight. But every night is a stay-in night, and suddenly you haven't lived in years. Want to know the secret about comfort zones? They don't protect you. They trap you. And the longer you stay in, the more they reinforce your fears. You start thinking, I can't do that. It's too risky. Or, I'm not ready. Guess what? You're never going to feel ready. Growth isn't about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about stepping into the unknown and figuring it out as you go. Now, let's get brutally honest. Leaving your comfort zone doesn't guarantee success. Sometimes you'll fail spectacularly. I've taken risks that crashed and burned so hard, I wanted to crawl back into my cozy prison forever. But here's the twist. Even in failure, I grew. Every stumble taught me something new, made me stronger, and prepared me for the next leap. Here's a controversial take. Staying in your comfort zone is selfish. Think about it. When you refuse to take risks, you're not just holding yourself back, you're depriving the world of your potential. That business you didn't start, it could have changed lives. That story you didn't write, someone might have needed to hear it. Your comfort zone isn't just limiting you, it's limiting the impact you could have on others. Now, let me hit you with a deep truth. The best things in life, joy, love, growth, fulfillment, they all live outside your comfort zone. Every defining moment of my life, every victory, every meaningful relationship, every breakthrough came from stepping into uncertainty. The magic happens when you're willing to trade comfort for courage. So, what's it going to be? Will you stay in your prison, convincing yourself it's safer this way? Or will you take the leap, knowing that even if you fall, you're moving forward? Here's my advice. Stop overthinking it. Take the risk. Start the thing. Make the move. Say yes to the scary opportunity. The truth is, your comfort zone might feel safe, but the world outside it is where life actually begins. 3. Not everyone deserves a second chance. All right, here's a spicy truth. Not everyone deserves a second chance. I know. This flies in the face of everything we're taught about forgiveness, redemption, and turning the other cheek. But let me break it down for you. There's a big difference between giving someone a second chance and giving them a second opportunity to hurt you. This one's controversial because we live in a culture that glorifies the idea of forgive and forget. We're told that holding on to grudges is toxic and that everyone deserves a fresh start. But let's be real. Some people will take that fresh start and use it to burn you all over again. Here's a personal story to illustrate this. A few years ago, I had a close friend who betrayed my trust in a way that left me gutted. We're talking about lies, manipulation, and actions that were straight up unforgivable. But because I valued the history of our friendship, I decided to give them a second chance. I thought, maybe they've learned. Maybe this time will be different. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. They broke my trust again, and this time it hurt even more because I chose to let them back in. It was a brutal lesson, but here's what I learned. Forgiveness is about freeing yourself, not about giving someone permission to re-enter your life. Forgiveness can happen quietly, on your terms. It doesn't mean you have to give them access to you again. Here's where it gets honest. When you keep giving second chances to people who've shown you they won't change, you're not being kind, you're being naive, and worse, you're disrespecting yourself. Boundaries aren't walls, they're filters. They let the right people in while keeping the wrong ones out. Now, I'm not saying people can't change, they absolutely can, but here's the catch. Real change takes time, effort, and accountability. It's not your job to wait around for someone to prove they've changed. And it's definitely not your job to act as their emotional punching bag while they figure it out. Let's add some jovial flair here because this topic is heavy. Think about it this way. Your life is like a VIP party. Do you really want to keep letting someone in who keeps stealing the drinks, starting fights, and ruining the vibe? Exactly. Your guest list needs bouncers, and sometimes you have to say, sorry, you're not on the list anymore. But here's the deeper message. Denying someone a second chance isn't about bitterness or revenge. It's about protecting your peace. Some relationships, whether they're friendships, romantic or family ties, aren't meant to last forever. And that's okay. Letting go isn't cruelty, it's clarity. There's also an important lesson in self-worth here. When you stop giving out second chances like they're Halloween candy, you're telling the world and yourself that your time, energy, and trust are valuable. You're setting the standard for how you deserve to be treated. Here's another hard truth. Sometimes we give second chances because we're afraid of being alone. We think, well, if I cut this person off, who's left? Let me tell you something. Loneliness isn't cured by surrounding yourself with people who don't value you. In fact, it's better to stand alone with your dignity intact than to stay surrounded by people who tear you down. I'll end with this. Second chances aren't a guarantee. They're a privilege. Not everyone earns them, and that's okay. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself, and even for the other person, is to walk away. Let them find their growth and redemption elsewhere, while you focus on your own peace and happiness. Remember, protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's survival. 4. Talent is overrated. Consistency wins. Let's talk about talent. Everyone loves to glorify it. Oh, they're so talented. We see athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, and think they're just born special, like the universe sprinkled a little extra magic dust on them at birth. Well, here's the truth you might not want to hear. Talent is overrated. You know what really wins? Consistency. This might ruffle some feathers, but here's the deal. Talent is sexy, but consistency is what gets results. Talent might get your foot in the door, but consistency builds the house. And here's the kicker. Consistent effort can even beat raw talent every single time. Let me share a personal experience to drive this home. When I first started a passion project, let's call it my big creative leap, I was terrible. Seriously, embarrassingly bad. I didn't have a natural knack for it. Meanwhile, I'd watch people who were just effortlessly good and think, why even bother? I'll never be that talented. But here's the thing. I showed up. Every single day. I practiced. I failed. I learned. And I repeated that cycle 100 times over. Slowly but surely, I got better. Not because I was talented, but because I refused to quit. Fast forward a couple of years, and guess what? I'm thriving in that field, while some of those naturals I envied back then gave up. Why? Because talent isn't enough. It's like a spark, useful for starting a fire, but useless if you don't have the fuel to keep it burning. And consistency, that's the fuel. Here's why this truth is controversial. We live in a world that idolizes quick success, the prodigy, the overnight sensation, the 20-something CEO. It's all smoke and mirrors. What they don't show you is the grind behind the scenes, the years of showing up, even when it was hard, boring, or seemed pointless. Here's a fun analogy. Talent is like having a fancy sports car. It's cool, flashy, and can go fast. But if you don't put gas in it regularly, that's consistency. It's just an expensive piece of junk sitting in your garage. Meanwhile, someone with a beat-up old car who diligently fills the tank and maintains it is actually getting places. Let's get real for a second. How many times have you started something, gotten frustrated because you weren't immediately good at it, and quit? I've done it. We've all done it. But here's the truth. Success doesn't come from being the best. It comes from being the one who sticks with it. Want to hear something deep? Consistency isn't just about building skills. It's about building character. It teaches you discipline, resilience, and the ability to push through when the excitement fades. And trust me, the excitement will fade. The honeymoon phase of any goal, whether it's fitness, a business, or learning a skill, is short-lived. The real winners are the ones who keep going long after the initial buzz wears off. Here's another personal truth. I used to envy people who seemed naturally gifted. I'd think they're just lucky. But as I've grown, I've realized that talent without work ethic is like potential energy. It sits there, unused. Meanwhile, someone less gifted but consistent will outperform them every time. And let's be real, consistency isn't glamorous. It's waking up early to hit the gym when you'd rather sleep. It's practicing your craft when no one's watching or applauding. It's doing the unsexy, repetitive tasks that don't get you likes on Instagram. But that's the difference between someone who dreams and someone who achieves. Here's a fun and slightly uncomfortable twist. The world isn't short on talented people. It's short on people who do the work. Think about it. How many incredible singers, writers, or athletes never make it because they lack discipline? Meanwhile, someone with half their talent is thriving because they kept showing up. Here's the ultimate takeaway. Consistency isn't just a skill, it's a mindset. It's the belief that small daily actions add up to big results over time. And here's the magic of it. When you're consistent, even you can surpass what you thought was your talent ceiling. So, stop putting talent on a pedestal. Don't waste your time envying people who seem naturally gifted. Instead, outlast them. Be the person who shows up, who grinds, who doesn't quit. Because in the long game of life, consistency is the ultimate cheat code. Talent gets attention, but consistency gets results. 5. Love won't always be enough. All right, here's one that might ruffle some feathers. Love won't always be enough. I know it sounds harsh, especially since we've grown up on fairy tales, rom-coms and pop songs telling us that love conquers all. But let's face it, life isn't a Nicholas Sparks novel. Love is powerful, yes, but it's not a magic wand that can fix everything. Let me get personal for a second. I once dated someone who I loved deeply. We were passionate, inseparable, and it felt like the kind of love people write songs about. But as time went on, we hit some major roadblocks, different values, communication issues, and completely opposite life goals. We'd fight, patch things up, and convince ourselves that love would somehow bridge the gap. Spoiler alert, it didn't. No matter how much we loved each other, the underlying cracks kept growing until the relationship finally fell apart. Here's the hard truth. Love is the foundation of a relationship, but it's not the whole house. You need trust, respect, communication, shared values, and compatibility to make it work. Love can't compensate for toxic behavior, lack of effort, or fundamental differences that drive you apart. Here's where this gets controversial. Society romanticizes love to the point where we're almost afraid to admit this. People stay in unhealthy relationships thinking, if I just love them harder, it'll all work out. But sometimes, loving someone harder isn't the answer, it's letting them go. Now, don't get me wrong, love is a beautiful, transformative force. It can inspire us, heal us, and bring us closer. But here's the kicker, love is a choice as much as it's a feeling, and that choice has to come with actions, compromise, accountability, and mutual effort. Without those, love becomes a one-way street, and you'll eventually crash. Let's add some humor to lighten the mood. Love is kind of like a plant. It's great to have the seeds, but if you don't water it, give it sunlight, and pull out the weeds, it's going to die. You wouldn't just stare at a wilted plant and say, "But I love you," expecting it to magically thrive, right? Relationships work the same way. Here's another personal story. A friend of mine got married thinking love was enough to carry them through anything, but over time they realized they wanted different things. One wanted kids, the other didn't. One wanted to travel, the other was a homebody. They loved each other deeply, but love couldn't erase the fact that they were fundamentally incompatible. Staying together became more painful than letting go. When they finally parted ways, it wasn't because they stopped loving each other. It was because love alone wasn't enough to make the relationship work. Now, let's get deep for a moment. The idea that love is all you need is comforting, but it's also dangerous. It puts blinders on us, making us overlook red flags, incompatibilities, or even outright mistreatment. It makes us think that if a relationship fails, we just didn't love hard enough, when the truth is, some relationships aren't meant to last, no matter how much love is there. And let's address an uncomfortable reality. Love doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. For some people, love is sacrifice. For others, it's freedom. For some, it's commitment. For others, it's fleeting passion. If your definitions of love don't align, you're setting yourself up for heartbreak, no matter how strong the feelings are. Here's the takeaway. Love is a starting point, not a guarantee. It's what gets you through the door, but the real work comes after. Relationships thrive on respect, effort, shared vision, and mutual understanding. Without those, love becomes a band-aid on a broken bone. It might cover the wound, but it won't heal it. So let's stop pretending love is the cure-all for every relationship problem. Sometimes love is part of the equation, but it's not the whole solution. And that's okay. The real beauty of love isn't that it's perfect. It's that it teaches us, grows us, and sometimes lets us go. In the end, love is always worth it, but it's not always enough. And learning to accept that might just be one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and the other person. 6. The best things in life are simple. Here's a truth that might make you pause. The best things in life are simple. Yep, not flashy, not expensive, not part of your 5-year plan, just simple. Now, I know this sounds like some cheesy Hallmark card, but hear me out because it's both controversial and eye-opening when you dig deeper. We live in a world that idolizes complexity. We're told we need more money, more gadgets, more achievements to be happy. The marketing machine feeds us this idea that happiness is just one luxury purchase, promotion, or exotic vacation away. But here's the kicker: chasing all that more often leaves you feeling emptier than before. Why? Because the things that genuinely make life worth living are usually ridiculously simple. Here's a personal story to bring this home. A few years ago, I was hustling like crazy. I was working long hours, chasing accolades, and buying into the idea that success equaled happiness. I'd reward myself with expensive dinners, new gadgets, and trips that looked great on Instagram. But when I'd get home, I felt nothing. The joy was fleeting at best, and I was too burned out to enjoy what I'd earned. Then one random Saturday, something shifted. I was sitting on my balcony, sipping a cup of coffee, watching the sunset. No phone, no agenda, no plans. And I felt this overwhelming sense of peace. That simple moment, no filters, no distractions, brought me more joy than all the milestones I'd been chasing. Now, here's where it gets controversial. This truth goes against the grind culture we've been sold. Society tells us that happiness is complicated, that it requires a big house, a perfect relationship, and a never-ending stream of achievements.